then it's a decision that comes back to the sanctity of when you think life does begin.
Dr. Oz, who of course is running for Senate in Pennsylvania as a Republican, was on Fox News and fell apart over a question on abortion. Now I'm going to play this clip for you, and then after I'm going to show you Dr. Oz's position on abortion just 2 years ago and how it was very different back then compared to what he is trying to campaign on now. Check this out.
What is your position as both a doctor and a senatorial candidate on when life begins? When should we draw the line when abortion is legal?
As a doctor, I appreciate the sanctity of life. And for that reason, I'm strongly pro-life. With the 3 exceptions I've mentioned, that's how I would vote.
And when does that life begin?
You know, again, if I'm pro-life, then it's a decision that comes back to the sanctity of when you think life does begin. And I believe it begins when you're in the mother's womb.
When you're in the mother's womb, but that carries you all the way up to 9 months of pregnancy.
No, of course not. Life's already started when you're in your mother's womb. But it's a rat hole to get trapped in the different ways of talking about it. We need, as a nation, to make sure the Constitution is appropriately followed, and people like me, and you may be in the same camp, who are pro-life, have our feelings respected. And this is something that should not be taken away from us by judiciary legislating from the bench.
Yeah, but that's also something that's going to have to be legislated, and that answer is going to have to be given specifically. Listen, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight.
Just absolutely incredible. I have to laugh because Dr. Oz is so clearly a fraud. As I'll get to, he had a very different public position on abortion rights just 2 years ago. But now that he's running as a Republican candidate for Senate, he has to play this game. But even in playing this game, he is unable to bring himself to say that life begins at conception, which is the conservative position, but he can't say it because he knows he doesn't believe it. So he'll play this game about being pro-life and, you know, the certain restrictions that he believes in. But at the end of the day, he can't say as a doctor that life begins at conception because he knows he does not believe that. He is such a phony. So recently, he also suggested that he was at peace that the Supreme Court could overturn Roe v. Wade. But here is what he said just 2 years earlier. Oz characterized efforts to overturn Roe as a misleading and possibly conspiratorial crusade. Not only was Oz supportive of abortion rights, he seemed puzzled that people would spend time fighting abortion rights, going so far as to say that as a physician, he was, quote, really worried about the anti-abortion movement and that eliminating Roe would have negative effects on women's health. Quote, it's, as a doctor, just putting my doctor hat on, it's a big time concern, Oz said in the 2019 interview, which aired on the Breakfast Club radio show. Quote, because I went to medical school in Philadelphia and I saw women who had coat hanger events, and I mean really traumatic events that happened when they were younger, before Roe v. Wade, and many of them were harmed for life. So if you want to watch this full interview, by the way, you can do so right here. I can't play it on this channel because Breakfast Club is very particular about copyright issues. But I will link to this below the video. It's at this point right here, 24 minutes, 47 seconds. You can watch him go on. He goes on for like 7 minutes defending abortion rights. Yet here today, he has tried to claim that he is pro-life, which in reality is anti-abortion. God, so dishonest. So going on here, Oz's defense of abortion wasn't just a passing question. He held forth for 7 minutes in this 2019 interview about the practice and was highly critical of anti-abortion advocates who argued that life begins at conception. His tone throughout the entire segment on abortion was one of concern that legislators might be passing abortion restrictions, and he seemed to endorse viability, generally thought of as about 24 weeks as a popular limit for abortion. So this is how he actually feels. But he's not going to say that on Fox News. Obviously, because he's trying to win an election. What a goddamn phony. Now, the question is, will conservative voters care? If he ends up being the candidate that they choose in the primary, will conservative voters care that he doesn't actually believe half the things that he pretends to believe? Because ultimately, we don't really know what he will do with the power. I mean, if he becomes senator, will he go with how he actually feels, or will he, you know, play to the base? That's unclear. So conservative voters, you know, they're going to have other options. They may decide we can't trust this guy. We'll pick somebody else. But we're going to have to wait and see. Obviously, there is a There will be much better candidates on the Democratic side. So John Fetterman is the front runner right now in terms of the Democratic Party and their choice, and he is, pro working class. He is a great working class populist in that sense. So he's a fantastic candidate to actually speak to, the average person who also doesn't normally come out to vote, maybe disillusioned by politics. But I think Fetterman can speak to those individuals. So if it ends up being Fetterman and Oz, it's going to be quite a fight. But ultimately, once Oz announced, I figured his celebrity status would basically propel him to the position. But if he can't even get these basic conservative positions, out clearly because he knows he doesn't believe them, then, we're going to have to wait and see if conservative voters trust him.